fighting fury, we're from Tigerland. In any weather you will see us with a grin, risking head and skin. If we're behind then never mind, we'll fight and win, for we're from Tigerland. We never weaken till the final siren's gone.
We are edging ever so close to draft week or draft night. It's about a week away. It's all the days are blurring into one now. But as we get close to draft night, as we said yesterday, we bring on the heavy hitters, the ones who know their shit and know what they're talking about. And we've got Tommy Wolfe back in the house from Reading the Play. He was an absolute fan favourite last time, it must be said. So, Tommy, thanks for jumping back on, mate. Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me back on. Thanks for the opportunity again.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure. Birdman, look, having a mock draft every day wasn't the intention, but it's kind of falling that way. Not through deliberate planning, but they're all different. So it's always just really interesting. And poor boy, I'm actually starting to wonder whether the mock drafts keep me sane or make me go even more insane. It's sometimes hard with the lines a little bit blurred. But before we get into the mock draft, your most recent mock draft, we were just talking off air about the announcement today of Dougie Cochran has now officially been tied to Port Adelaide's NGA, which is a decision I think that not many people thought was going to happen. I think we all thought it was going to go the other way, but they obviously had the relevant documentation. So now we're kind of faced with a scenario that seemed like they were trying to avoid, where, again, the best two players of the draft potentially tied to other clubs.
Yeah, I'm like you. I thought it was going to go the other way purely because all the talk out of the AFL has been we want to make matching bids hard. We want a less compromised draft. So I just thought that was going to follow suit and that decision would be the other way. But today it's dropped that 1 and 2 next year look like they're going to be club tied, which is going to be interesting for the teams that do finish down the bottom.
I reckon the clubs who do finish lower with the picks are going to just start bidding real hard, make them earn it. I think clubs will start getting fed up with it. I know that we had a link as well to Cody Walker, so I can see us definitely placing an early bid in if I'm assuming we'll finish down in the bottom 4. But do you reckon it gets other clubs a bit pissed off and they maybe will start being a bit more aggressive, and maybe we start seeing that this year?
I think for sure this year we'll see a much more aggressive mindset towards bidding. Like if you think about the past, Nick Dacos going at pick 4 when it was him and Horne-Francis 1 and 2 neck and neck all year, and then all of a sudden he's pick 4 on the night. I think we're going to see less and less of that, and we're going to see more and more of clubs going, I'll make 3 bids in a row. Like, the old Bidman, the Bidman call. I think you guys could do 3, get them out of the way early, evaporate all those picks, bring that 38 that you've got now into 32, 30 maybe, and see what you can get that way.
And that's it. Clubs will start playing the longer game with their other picks, won't they? And I suppose when we made that trade for Tyler Young initially, a lot of people were actually thinking the other way, thinking it was going to push out into the 40s and 50s by the time the kids all the academies had been done, but sort of forgetting that you need the picks to absorb to be able to get those players. So it actually ends up being a pretty good deal if it ends up being about a pick 32 to 33.
And I think this is the last year that's probably going to work, because the talk is that next year you'll only be able to match with 2 picks. So they won't be able to get 5 picks between 20 and 40 and match an early pick that way, which will bring those later picks in. It'll be 2 high picks. So you might come in a couple of spots, but not as much as you can at the moment.
Yeah, but the teams have to just pay a bit more of a premium. Do you prefer that? Do you prefer the clubs having to pay a more premium to get the players they're linked to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like the Northern Academies serve a really important purpose. We're starting to see real talent come out of Queensland, where before it was rugby players and cricketers. We're now seeing AFL players. So I think it serves a really important purpose. But I think where people and, the fans find it hard is Brisbane finish the premiers this year. They're eligible theoretically to have the 18th best kid come to their club, but they're going to be able to, through, trading off lesser assets, get enough points to match the 4th or 5th or 6th best kid in the draft. Now, what we want Brisbane to have to go, hey, if we really want Annabelle, we need to be giving up Kai Lohman and Zach Bailey to get the pick capital in. And I think that's when fans will go, okay, that's fair enough. You've had to give out some.
They've had to make a decision. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas at the moment, they're just topping up and adding extra icing on top of their very nice looking cake. Wonderful for them, and we'd all be thrilled if we were in the same position. But I suppose the purpose of the draft is to help the teams who are struggling. And if they aren't getting reasonable access to those better players, then it sort of defeats the purpose.
I think, like in particular, you look at those clubs that have been stuck in the middle of the table, your St Kildas and Essendon and for a long time, Carlton, those kind of clubs. you're getting access to the 9th, 10th, 11th best player who are good kids. They're talented kids, but you're never getting your megastars at those picks, not very often anyway. And so those clubs, they get enough talent to be competitive and stay there, but they don't get the megastar that can drive them up. And then if you got academy sides being able to easily match bids by trading later assets, and they're taking some of those stars that these middle range clubs are not getting, it even magnifies that further, I think.
Exactly right. It's an interesting system. I'm not sure if you know the answer to this one yet. So what happens next year if a bid comes late in the first round? How do you think it gets matched? Can they just go, is it to the second round and that's it? Or is it 2 picks within the first round? Have they sort of outlined any of that yet?
So the idea that's been floated is that the discount will be gone. So there'll be no discount. You need to match with full points, but only with 2 picks. So if the bid was on a pick that was worth, let's say 18 next year's 800 and something points, let's say it's 800 points, and you had, pick, I don't know, let's say it's 14 might be worth 600 and something, and then you need to have 200 points in the next pick. So it would need to be a relatively decent pick. It'd probably need to be, say, pick 14 and pick 32, something in those sort of, that's a rough estimate. But it would mean that you couldn't go pick 14, pick 40, pick 43, pick 47 just to get those extra 200 points. It would make it much harder to match, I think.
Okay, so you can use 2 picks wherever they fall within your order, as long as the 2 picks you use equal the actual amount of points.
So theoretically, if it was a bid at pick 1 where it was 3,000, you're going to need pick 2 and then pick 17 or something like that. So like it's a seriously high range.
And I think Cal Toomey might have used that as the example with Cody Walker, because it's not actually that far-fetched, that option happening, to be honest, with how good Cody is. So that's interesting. I mean, they've probably picked up a few extra picks they could maybe bundle, but then it's up to the club who finishes with that second pick to make that deal enticing enough to do it. So yeah, that would be interesting. Geez, I'd love to be able to take him from under their nose. It'd be very funny.
Watching next year with now Cochrane and Walker early, Port and Carlton are going to need to do some serious work to get some early picks.
Do they, let's say their season becomes a little bit derailed by the halfway mark. You have to wonder if they start going, maybe if we just drop a couple more spots, it might help us out a little bit.
You're looking at
the
league tries to discourage tanking as a concept, obviously.
For sure.
Famous example of Melbourne being fined for not tanking, but you're going to have to question, so will Carlton make a trade in this draft if someone throws up a future first because they've got Walker in mind? They know they need bankable points. Are they going to head into next year with, say, their first pick, whichever that is going to be nominally, and then they might try and get 3 or 4 seconds in, and then next year try and trade a couple of those seconds to get one higher, then a first and one of those other seconds to get higher again, just to find
they'll
these
be
points.
Multi-trading. So they'll be bundling and then bundling the bundle they receive, and they'll just keep going, won't they? Yeah.
Yep. I know, Essendon with Kobe Buick in a couple of years, and that's the Tasmania draft where it's going to be heavily impacted, so a lot of talent's going to be stripped. They're going to need to think about, well, he's going to be super early given some of the good kids are going to be gone.
Yes.
How are they going to get points for it? How are they going to get the picks for it? They're going to start thinking about those trades now, which is why I think they pushed hard for the Hawthorn 27 first rounder.
And I suppose the AFL's other thinking behind this is by having to do those bundling up of trades, it's going to benefit the other clubs who are receiving the picks as well, because they'll get multiple chances to pick talented kids in drafts as well. So it is kind of a win-win for everybody in a lot of ways if you can execute it well enough.
Yeah, I think that's the aim, is that it rebalances what's become a bit more compromised. And I think without having seen it live, I think in theory it should do a good job.
They'll find a way to stuff it up, though. Nothing more certain. But we'll revisit this in 12 months and see where it landed. All right, well, we'll get stuck into the mock draft. We're going to bring up picks 1 to 5 straight off the bat. And we've got your match points in there as well, which is awesome too. Talk us through it. You've got pick number 1 with West Coast, William Dersma.
I think it's maybe the only pick I'm going to get right. I'm going to bank on he's definitely going to go pick 1. So I think we've talked about him, probably for the last, 2 or 3 months as being pretty consensus number 1. He's got all the star factor. He's got the performances. He's got the versatility. And West Coast just need talented guys that they can play, and he's going to be great for them.
Did you hear, I think it was Mitch Cleary on Triple M on a drive home show, did float that he had heard that West Coast may toy with the idea of going CDT at 1. I didn't know whether it was more a tactic to try and draw a trade from Essendon or not.
Yeah, I did hear that. I think this is the point in the draft where now you start to hear a lot of things get thrown out there, and it's quite hard, particularly for someone like me who's outside the industry, to work out what's real and what's, trying to cause people to second guess and clubs to make decisions or clubs to trade or not trade. So
Yeah.
I think I'd lean towards that being a bit of scuttlebutt, and I think it'll be Dersma at 1.
I reckon it's equally as hard for people inside the industry to work out if it's bullshit or not. That's how good clubs are. Pick 2, you've got the bid coming through for Ewland.
Yeah, I think like we spoke about, get aggressive on the bids, make these clubs pay up. Gold Coast have done some good manoeuvring to get the points in, but let's make them use their points. I think Ewland and Patterson are going to go early in the hopes that maybe some of the other academy boys get shaken loose.
Could, if West Coast went back-to-back, like direct back-to-back bids, could that cause any issues for Gold Coast up front with Patterson? Or would they, they'd be able to trade picks on the night, of course, to make it work.
Yeah, there's 2 things. They could do a live trade, so they could go, oh, wow, we didn't expect that. Here's some things that we talked about with other clubs, and maybe they'd flick some picks for points. I know there's talk with Essendon maybe flicking a couple of the 20s for a teens pick, and I'm sure they'll talk to a few clubs. The other one is that they can just accept the deficit. It's not going to be so big that they can't take the player. I think the deficit rules is you can go 1,167 points into next year, which is the equivalent of picks 18, 36, 54. So they're allowed to go into deficit. Taking Patterson and Ewland at 1 and 2 would put them into deficit straight away, which means that matching other kids becomes a serious decision for them.
And I think their deficit's impacted because I think that 1,000 points is on the premise you've got a first, second, and third. So they've only got 2 seconds and 2 thirds. So I think their max is about 660 odd. So they've no doubt they've got these scenarios mapped out in a big way. But hopefully there's some curveballs. Now pick 3. It's interesting to see who you've got here with Dyson Sharp, because I think we spoke about it last time that no one really knows where to place him, and it could go so many different ways. But I don't mind. I actually think it's a really good pick for West Coast. If you're talking about rounding out a midfield with Dersma, Reid, and Sharp, I reckon it makes sense.
I've received some strong feedback on the Sharp pick at 3 over the last couple of days. Yeah, I know all the talk has been CDT, and CDT he looks like a wonderful talent. It's not a knock on him. I just think there's 2 clubs in particular in the Noah's Ark pair-up picks, the 2x2x2x2. West Coast and Essendon are both in a heavy rebuild phase that hasn't really commenced. Like Richmond's got a heap of kids in last year, so you guys have made a really good start, and you've got some serious midfielders and some serious leadership in there. I think West Coast and Essendon need to prioritise character and the intangibles that you get with a Dyson Sharp. I also I can't get out of my head this idea of Harley Reid as a raging bull, Willem Dersma as this freak moving utility who's got height and marking, and then Dyson Sharp as this hyper competitive. He's super defensively. He balances out those other 2's attacking instincts so well. All 3 of them have got size. They got power. They got strength. I just think it's just like a 1-2 where they finish that midfield, and it's 2 there in my head for me to not pick Sharp here.
I agree. I think they complement each other really, really well. It does seem to make a lot of sense for them, and that sets your midfield up for the next decade. And then you're going to keep adding in around that too. Let's not forget with other drafts down the line and trading and things like that. But that's a good starting point. Pick number 5, the Dan Annable bid comes in.
Yeah, he's just such a good player. Like, I think, with the idea of clubs being aggressive with their bids, I think he's the one where we go, no, we're happy to take him at this pick. Yeah. Pick 5, Annable makes sense. So if Brisbane are not willing, well, we're more than happy to have this guy because he's a gun. He's the most well-rounded midfielder. I think he's got the most well-rounded game of all the mids this year.
Just realised I've added a T on the end of gold for Gold Coast. That's well done by me with the spelling. We'll bring up the next bunch of picks. Talk us through these. Pick number 6 for the Tigers, Cooper Duff Tytler.
Yeah, I think this is just a talent pick. Like, he's at pick 6. I don't think you can turn him down. I know a lot of Richmond fans think maybe the ruck's not a massive area of need. You've got a lot of young, tall forwards you took last year as well. So maybe Duff Tytler doesn't feel like a real need. But I just think with his athleticism, his talent, and the fact that he's being considered 1 or 2 all year, I just don't think he's going to get past Richmond. I think you'll just be like, well, how good's this? We've just got this super talent available. We have to take him.
Do you think his sort of mini growth spurt as well in the off season, does that make it more appetizing, more appealing than the ruck rule? Like it feels like a few things, not that he needed him to fall his way because he's already a gun player, but it feels like a few more things additionally have added some extra layers and more reasons why he would be a good prospect.
Yeah, and this is like you were talking with me off air before about how it's ramped up and there's so much information. It's getting so hectic as we get, a week in from the draft, and just like we can overthink all this stuff. And like there's so much people talking about, the new ruck rule, so that changes Duff Tyler completely. And his combine, he was quicker than we thought. So like we've known how good he is for a long time, and I think it was just that constant knowing how good he is that people forget, or they just kind of disregard. They get excited by other flavors of the month. I think the ruck rule will help him, but I don't think that's the reason why you definitely take him. I just think he's going to be, a super athletic, damaging player. He'll be forward. He'll be rucking around the ground. He'll probably link up on a wing at various stages because of his running power and his ability to use the ball by foot. So I just think he's so talented that you can't pass him up.
Do we know his official height? I could have sworn I read somewhere 202, but I don't know if that was made up or not.
I haven't heard 202. Last I heard was 201.
Okay. Well, yeah, somewhere in between. Maybe 201's about the mark. Oh, there you go. Yeah. 201. A few people have gone with that. Pick 7 for the Tigers, Xavier Taylor.
Yeah, I got some feedback about this as well.
It hurts us seeing the name at number 9, I think, is where the feedback may have been surrounding if I was to take a guess.
No, and I get that. I do. I released a post as well today saying that it's such a cascade sort of a draft. Like one different pick changes the whole order. So if Duff Tyler goes at 2, then there's no doubt you take Roby with the next pick. I just think that Duff Tyler being available changes things. And I think people have got a bit narrow on Taylor, that he's this sort of third tall hybrid defender. I'm not looking at him like that at all. I've rewatched a lot of tape on him in the last sort of couple of weeks, and his athleticism, I don't know. I don't think I missed it before, but I probably just didn't appreciate it before. His athleticism is off the charts. He's got fast feet. He's nimble in a phone box. His pure straight line speed is unreal. I just keep thinking he's more Josh Weddle than he is Jordan Ridley. And so I think we need to stop thinking about him as this sort of defensive interceptor, and he could be in anything. He could be a winger. He could potentially even become someone who does minutes on ball as a really powerful, explosive, bigger body. So no, I just think he's super. He's probably my favorite player in the draft.
I agree. I don't view him strictly as a defender either. I think he's got a lot more tricks up his sleeve in positions he can play to have impact. It's actually a little bit surprising he's not done it already. But I see him definitely playing other spots than being a defender. The Carlton bid for Harry Dean. Is it fair to say that this bid, from what we keep hearing, could quite literally come anywhere?
Yeah, we've got West Coast threatening with pick 2 to try and orchestrate a trade with Carlton so they can get some more picks up the order. We've got Richmond suggesting that Bidman could be back and they could bid 3 players in a row. We've got Essendon saying, well, he won't get past us. I think there's a lot of clubs making these calls to try and get those picks 9 and 11 out of Carlton. I think there's a bit of that at play.
Yeah, I agree. He's a talented kid, though. And so if any of these clubs above were to bid, I think they'd all be comfortable enough to take him if it weren't matched. But it'll of course be matched. We all know that. But
yeah, and he is the best key defender in the draft. So, there is that side that he is a very good player.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it actually does make a little bit of sense with West Coast. It's maybe not as far-fetched as maybe some Carlton people might think. I don't know, but it'll be very interesting come draft night. The Bombers with back-to-back picks, Sullivan, Roby, and Jacob Farrow, which I love that pick. And I've stuck up so great typing. Well done. Jesus, I'm on fire.
So Roby, I think the Bombers are mad into Roby. The talk is that Melbourne was the first club when he was still at Rowville to sort of get in contact. And then the chatter out of people like Cal Toomey, who I know is an Essendon fan, so he leans a bit that way, is that Essendon were very early in the queue. So they've loved him for a long time. And the fact that he gets past Richmond here, they take him. As I said, if Duff Tyler goes to West Coast, then Richmond take Roby. And this changes the whole Essendon scenario. So I've gone here with, if they get Roby, they take Farrow. I think Cumming and Roby, Essendon are not at a point where they can take too many of the same type. And I think the draft where Essendon have got their next lot of picks, there's a few forward line options, and I think they'll think about diversification. So Farrow gives them a defensive half kind of mid operator, whereas Roby's that forward half mid operator. Now, if Roby went to Richmond, Essendon, I think, take Sharp and Cumming. I think that would be what they would hope for.
Either pairing is pretty good. And it's interesting you've got Farrow there just kind of on the back of him being invited to the draft night, where I guess a little bit prior to that, a lot of mock drafts and phantom drafts were kind of putting him in around that 15 area, whereas getting invited sort of indicates there is some strong interest in the top 10. Could you see him going any higher at all? Do you reckon there could be any interest from anybody else above, or does it sort of start around the Essendon Melbourne area?
I think it starts at Essendon, and I don't think it gets past Hawthorn. That's my feel on Farrow.
Agree. I don't think he would get past Hawthorn either. I think that's about as far as he would go. He'll be a really good pick. All that rounds out the 10. We'll bring up the next bunch. So then Melbourne come in with their back-to-back picks, Sam Grill and Lockie Dobberston.
Yeah, I think Grill's a very interesting player because there's every chance that Richmond could look to take him early. I know that Richmond love him, and Richmond have spoken about the need for speed, and he's an amazing runner. Like, he was sub 3 seconds for the 20 and then sub 6 minutes for the 2K. So he's a freak endurance power speed combo runner. He's got a bit of work to do with his kicking, but so do all the kids. But he's also, I think he's got scope to move inside. Like, I heard someone talk about him as being a bit Butters-like, and I'm not going to say he's as good as Butters because that's a big call. But there are things about his movement and the way that he attacks the ball and the way that he sort of moves through stoppage, zigzags in and out at that smaller body that does give a bit of resemblance. So I think he's a very good player.
It's going to be interesting to see where he lands because, I mean, the talk's been that if we don't take him, that, he could slip to that pick or even a little bit further. And I guess that just speaks more about how even that bunch of players are in that sort of bracket and that it just all the needs kind of kick in with what clubs want. Lockie Dobberston, I don't mind that for a pick. I think do you think that's as high as he could go? I think it's a good spot for him.
I think he could go higher. I think if West Coast do a deal with Carlton and pick up some earlier picks where the 9 and 11 are, and so they don't get absorbed in the Dean bid, I think we could see them take Dobberston early. I think Essendon will think about him. The game's gone towards these ground level players who are clean, fast, and damaging. You look at Brisbane in the grand final they've got 4 of them. And it's just the idea that when the game gets hot and entry inside 50 is a bit more scrappy, you want guys who can work in the chaos. They can get in and out of trouble. They can be clean at ground level. And Dobberston does those things. He's a very dangerous inside 50 player.
He is. It'd be interesting to see where he goes on draft night. Pick 13, the Hawks, Sam Cumming. That's a great get for them. I'm a little bit jealous of that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting him ending up. It's like this, and I spoke about this before, the cascading effect. Like, picks change this whole order. I would have never have said that Cumming would be pick 13. I think he's a top 8 player in this draft. And then all of a sudden you're just going through the picks and you're picking the players and you get to 13, you're like, how have we not taken him? So he had to go to Hawthorn there. I can easily see him going in that sort of top 7 or 8 players. He's got a lot of good attributes. He's tough, he's aggressive, he's hard. He wins a lot of contested ball. I think the knocks probably are that his balance between contested ball and uncontested ball is a bit skewed towards the contest. He doesn't get enough easy ball yet, which is something he can learn. And I think maybe there's a bit of a query on his kicking. Not that it's bad. He's not a bad kick, and he's certainly got penetration. But there's just a few technical things that sometimes come a bit unstuck under real heat. So I think that's probably the only queries on him. Otherwise, I think he's great. Solid overhead, kicks goals, powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I wouldn't be against us having a crack at him as well. And I could definitely see one of the clubs with the back-to-back picks pairing him with a Sharp, like you mentioned earlier, keep the South Australian group together for, I suppose, to help with retention, I guess is maybe a way to kind of avoid it. That would be a really good get if the Hawks got him there. Pick 14 for the Giants, Oscar Taylor, who obviously shot lights out at the Combine.
Yeah, he's running, speed. Like, we knew he was quick watching him play, but sometimes the Combine just matches up nice and you go, yeah, okay, I'm right. He's not just running away from slower players. Every time I look at him, he is genuinely quick. And he just feels like a Giants player, smooth moving. He's got elite speed. He takes on kicks. I think he's a good kick. I think he maybe bites off more than he can chew sometimes. I think he's going to work on his decision-making. But I think he's a really attacking rebounder that suits the way they play.
Do you reckon at this level of football, when clubs are looking for talent, do you reckon that they would rather kids make mistakes by trying to take off a bit more than they should, just showing they're willing to try and take the risk and learn, rather than making mistakes by playing it safe?
It's an interesting one. I think the caveat to it is that they don't go into their shell when they make mistakes. They want kids who have the resilience to bounce back. We want you to try it. It was a mistake or it was a failed effort. You go again, you don't lose, you don't drop your bundle, you don't lose your head. And I think that's one of the things that AFL clubs love. They love resilient kids who are willing to take on, potentially criticism, harsh feedback, and work to improve. And so kids who keep going back to the well and they see improvement, I think they're the ones they love.
It's funny you sort of put it like that, because I immediately think back to a few times last year where I noticed Luke Traynor try and take off a really dangerous kick, failed. You see him get shitty with himself, and then he's trying it again a few minutes later. I'm like, awesome. He's not just going to, oh shit, okay, I'm going to play it safe now. He's still trying to make it happen. I really like that in a play. I think it's definitely important.
Massive.
Pick 15, the Eagles, Harley Barker. That's a good pick. That one annoys me too, because I'd love to be able to get Harley Barker. He's going to be a really, really good wingman for many years to come if whoever gets him.
Yep, I love it. I think last time we spoke, I kind of leaned a little bit towards sort of a club who had the ability to not need him for a year would be more likely to take him. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, clubs down the bottom, they don't need to win now. They need to bank the best talent. And so my mindset here is that West Coast don't need to win their first 15 games this year. They just need to continue to improve and develop. And they need to know that the kid they pick in the draft is the best kid they can that rounds out that midfield. We talk about Sharp, Dersma and Reed in the centre square, and then you've got Barker running outside that. I think we're starting to see the makings of a really good midfield group. Especially
with McQualter's coaching style as well. Very much running gun and fast pace. It would suit Harley Barker really, really nicely. Do you think, every time I always pitch plays, and I think that one of this player might appear on one of the next pages, but a couple of plays that I've pegged for us with our pick in the 30s have had knee injuries. I'm just not as scared off by that now. I know ACLs are horrible injuries, but unfortunately, I feel like they're so common these days that they're easier to come back from. Clubs are so well better equipped. Medicine and sports science is so much more advanced. I just don't think that it's the same deterrent it once was.
I agree with you 100%. If you think about, even watching footy 15, 20 years ago, they always talked about, the ACL, it's a 12-month injury, but then it's another 12 months before you get back to your ability. It's really a 2-year injury. That's not the case now. These guys come back in 12 months and, they play the way they played beforehand. They might need a little bit of time to get back to the speed of the game, but in terms of their ability to pick it back up, it's lightning quick now. Modern medicine, rehab, all of it's tip-top. You get the odd outlier. I think of someone like, Daniel Menzel, who played at Geelong. You have to question if he's done that many knees, and he's talked about as being very diligent with his rehab. Is there potentially a genetic thing? Is there an alignment in his knee that wasn't built for the torque pressures in twisting and turning football? But I think by and large, we see guys do ACLs, and most of them, if not all of them, come back and play as good, if not better, footy post that.
Yeah, I agree. It shouldn't be too much of a deterrent, I wouldn't have thought, for clubs. On to the next 5. So the Blues back on the board with, I think, one of the picks that slid down. They get back from the leftover from the bid matching. Got them with Aiden Schubert.
Yeah. This is such an interesting part of the draft. And this is why I can't wait for next Wednesday night to watch and just follow along and see what happens, because there's so many good, evenly matched players around this part of the draft. And so clubs are just going to be like, I think maybe Carlton will think a key forward because Curno's gone. I like what Schubert brings. I think he's a really good sort of centre-half forward type. But Carlton might be thinking, oh, no, we need a kicker off half-back, so it's Josh Lindsay. Or they might be thinking we need a power running half-forward, so Josh Philippou. I think clubs are going to determine their needs on the night, or before the night, obviously, but we'll see it revealed on the night. But I think Schubert makes sense here.
Makes sense with losing, Curnow. I can see that happening. Pick 17 for the Bulldogs, Blake Threadgold, defender. I think it's a really well-positioned pick for them as well.
Yeah, I originally had Threadgold when he first started bolting up as an option at Freo, which was about pick 20, I think, as sort of an Alex Pearce replacement down the track. But then just like I said, going through the draft and you get to pick 17, you're at the Dogs, and I just thought, well, they tried to get Cal Wilkie out of St Kilda. They're obviously keen for a defensive option. I know he's not ready-made and he's not going to make a difference to them next season. But in terms of their long-term planning, going along with their key forwards who are quite young, I think Threadgold is the pick here.
Pick at 18 for the Crows, Josh Lindsay.
Another one I've had quite a bit of feedback. Apparently Adelaide have got all the halfbacks they need for the next 10 years, and I'm happy to cop that if that's the reality and that's how Adelaide go. I just think that Josh Lindsay offers such a dynamic weapon by foot. I think Adelaide, you add Rankin back into their final side in their midfield and their results are probably a bit different. So I think forward of centre, they're good. On ball, I think they're damaging. Down back, I think some more creative foot skills. And I think Lindsay is that. So I think he'd add to them pretty quickly.
Geelong with Mitch Marsh at pick 19.
Yeah, just another really good player out of South Australia. That SA team was fantastic this year.
Oh, that was great.
And he's that sort of mid-sized forward, so he fits in between Shannon Neal and Jeremy Cameron as that sort of tweener that floats between. He's got scope to push up high and do damage with his foot skills up on a wing and around the ground. But as that sort of third tall marking, I suppose, Jack Gunston type of player, I think he'll be really valuable for the Cats.
He would slot in really well there. Can you imagine being a player like him and having that support of Jeremy Cameron and Neal and having the delivery that he would have, just able to ease in? There'd be no expectation, no big pressure. It's a great environment they've created to be able to develop and grow players like that. So, he'd be a great get there. Freo pick 20. Okay.
Just before, I think the comparison there would be like you look at Geelong. If they take a Mitch Marsh, he gets the third defender. He gets more space and time.
Yeah.
He's able to build into a career a lot more easily than, say, if you look at Richmond, you guys drafted 3 young key forwards last year. Tom Lynch was injured for quite a lot last year. Those young boys.
Off you go, lads. Go deal with it.
Yeah. And it's a much harder position to learn in when you're not got protection from a main man. And so I think Marsh at Geelong, it's just a bit of a nice ease into AFL footy. Not that AFL's easy.
No, I know what you mean, though. I 100% agree. Pick 20 for Freo, Noah Hibbins-Hargraves. He's going to be another one on draft night that I guess has scope to maybe go high, but his consistency could be the thing that holds clubs back. But you can see why clubs may take a risk on a little bit earlier if need be.
I think he could go earlier than this. I think he could be someone that Hawthorn look at from that point onwards. He's got so much potential to be, one of the best players in the draft. He on talent is probably in top 10. His injury interrupted year meant that he kind of was a bit fits and spurts. He never really got going. And I think that contributes to the inconsistency. I think there was a stat that I saw a podcast or a thing this week where someone said he's kicked 18-4 in last quarters. Now, they're not all game-winning goals, but he's just clutch and he's like, that's consistent. He does that regularly. That's 18 times, in a couple of seasons that he's kicked goals in the last quarter. That's pretty consistent play. I know his numbers aren't always high, but high half forwards can tend to get starved out of the game. So I think he's a really good player and he could go a lot earlier than this.
This is a really good comment from John, that picks 15 to 22 look handy. And I think the more, like, I've had quite a lot of mock drafts on videos and everything like that. I think the more you talk about it, the more you look into it and research it, the more I don't buy into it being a weak draft. It's just an even draft. And I definitely subscribe to the top end talent not being as good as last year or as deep, but that's not to take away from the other guys at this part of the draft who are going to be very good players in their own right.
Yeah, I don't want to take away from what we might talk about later, but you got me to think about sort of a top 15 from this year and last year combined.
Yeah.
And the top 15 leans towards last year, but it balances out by the time you get to about 25. And I think that's because of the strength in this band, this sort of 15 to 25, in this draft is really quite good, I think. So I'm with you on that. I think it's a very even draft rather than a poor draft.
Pick 21, the Bombers. Oh, Javan Filippo. Geez, you're taking all the good players. My goodness.
He is a good player. I think I heard someone say this year, and I couldn't agree more, he feels like he's 12 months off the other kids. He's just that bit more raw and unrefined, and we don't quite know what he is at the top level. But he's got the athleticism, he's got the foot skills, he's dual-sided, he's got running power that's unreal. He's a former decathlete, and his speed endurance combos off the charts. He's got good marking ability, so he marks above his 183 height. But we haven't seen him play at the highest level. So he bullied South Australian under-18s comp. He did get some senior games late in the year, and he was quite quiet. So we just don't know how he translates and what role is going to bring out the best in him. But his talent is definitely there.
It was interesting. We were talking about this last night, that he came out on SA radio, and I think the question was asked to him, who's shown the most interest? And he said that Richmond has by far, with multiple meetings and phone calls. And I'm like, that's really interesting. I mean, either he's trying to sell himself and it's not true, or if it is true, we don't exactly have a pick in the spot to take him. So I'm like, are we actually considering a split pick? Because that's without, if he falls within that middle range, that's when we'd be primed to get him. But yeah, he will be, whoever takes him. I agree with you. I think they have to just buy their time, maybe the first 12 to 18 months, but I think the long-term payoff could be quite handy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And pick 22 to round out the first round, the Hawks taking Adam Swade, unmatched. You don't have the Bombers matching.
Yeah, and this is just, again, the flow-on effects of picks earlier, and then who's available in the next sort of 5 or 6 picks where Essendon have got their next 2. It just would mean that Essendon's draft becomes very forward line heavy, and I think there's better options for them to give them more variety with their spread of picks. It means they're going to take 5 players. We don't want them to take 5 half forwards. Well, Essendon don't want to take 5 half forwards, I don't think. So that was part of the reason why Farrow went in their second pick early, and it's kind of why I lean away from Swade here, even though he's a very good player.
It's a fair point. You don't want to sort of fall into the same trap that North Melbourne did, picking all the same player type and then just having way too much surplus. With that, we'll roll into the second round because it'll start to make sense why you've done what you've done there. So kicking off the second round, North Melbourne, Lewis Emmett, the big man.
Yeah, North, and a few fans sort of contacted me during the weeks for saying they don't think key forwards. They think wings and outside runners, half forwards, half backs. Mainly because North have gone so midfield heavy recently, and I can tend to agree with that. And I know that Larky's a good forward, and they'd ideally like a key defender. Well, Threadgold's gone, so he's not available. I see Louis Emmett as the best player here for multiple reasons. He's got athleticism, he's aggressive, and he's brave in the air. He does launch at it. He's got super ceiling. As a ruck forward, I think he's not just another pure key forward for North. But I also think Louis Emmett could be someone who gets into an AFL club. They see his attributes, they see him train, they see his aggression, his bravery in the air, and they might just see centre half back. And I think that there's potential that he could play key position at either end. And so North are going to bank on him working out one way or the other.
Don't mind that. They could do with that, actually. Sydney, pick 24, Max King bid comes in.
Yeah, again, we're not going to let players slide. Max King maybe didn't have the best year, but he's got the raw attributes to be a very good player. I think he's a bit similar to Gary Rowan, who, whilst not an amazing footballer, had a very strong and solid career, and he was a pick 6. Now, King's probably not quite as refined as what Rowan was at that time, but he's got the speed, the power, the launch, X factor, and I think in a good system like Sydney, and they've had him in their academy, so they know what they're going to be working with, I think they'll make him into a really dangerous sort of third tall / high half 40 type player.
Kangaroos back on the board at 25 with Liam Heatherton.
And I get that this is that whole, you've taken 2 key forwards. I think Liam Heatherton is one that people have slept on because he's missed so much.
Dark horse, I keep hearing.
Yeah, I think he's great. I think had he played the full year, he'd be in the conversation as one of the best key forwards in this crop. I really do think that. I like him. I see a bit of Josh Kennedy from West Coast in the way that he's sort of that long body launch, that he marks, that he's a really smart lead and mark forward. He's not necessarily a bear in the square kind of operator. I think he's got a few tricks. So, lead up, mark it, jumping and marking at the highest point. But he's also got the movement to be a dangerous option when it does hit the ground. So I really like him as a player and think he'll be a strong goal kicker.
Swans, another bid, Harry Kyle on pick 26.
Yeah, he's a riser, and he's not one I'd given much thought to until pretty recently. But upon review of his power and his size and his running and his rawness, I think that you see him as a halfback at the moment, but he's got the scope to push up and be more than just that. He's got a real solid frame. He's got running power. He's got kicking penetration. I think he could be a real athletic weapon. And I think he's not coming from as far back as people might think with regards to his footy IQ. I think he's going to be a decent player, and this is about the range for him.
And so these next back-to-back Essendon picks completely justify why you did what you did at the end of the first round and not matching the bid. And I'm a little bit jealous that you've got Sam Allen here because I want him with our pick in the 30s. I'm a bit fresh onto Sam Allen. I didn't know much about him until very recently, but his athletic profile is off the charts. Another one that we have to wait a little bit for if you got him, but he seems like he'll be a player that's worth the wait. And some to pick it, I think, just is fairly self-explanatory with what you're going to get there.
Yeah, Sam Allen's one that he's been in the back of my mind all year. And, he started the year, played, I think, maybe 7 or 8 games across Coates League and school footy, and then did the ACL. And there were raps on him already at that point that he was a serious player. Then the injury means he's out of sight, out of mind. But I kept, Sam Allen was always just there. And then late, there's been a bit more interest, and he's crept into my top 50 power rankings in my last edition. And then when you just think about his athletic profile, speed, endurance combo, vertical leap is off the charts. And I think what's not being spoken about enough is he's seriously good overhead. He's a real marking threat. And, people talk about, you're on a tall winger, so you can get marking power around the ground. Sam Allen at 182 centimetres plays like a tall winger. His vertical leap and bravery in the air, serious. And Oakley were going to push him through the midfield this year if he didn't get injured. So he's got the scope they think he can play a contested game as well. So I think he's a really good player.
Where do you reckon he could have gone in the open draft had he not done the knee and played the year out, projecting what maybe the year looked like him as a midfielder?
I think he's top 15 contention for sure. I think he's a really good player. He's like that. When you watch him run, he's got those long legs. There's that long striding, kicking penetration. His kicking probably needs a little bit of refinement. It's not perfect, but it's certainly got penetration, and he's got that loping, powerful stride. He looks like a good footballer, and he marks like one, certainly.
He marks very strong. So then he got Pickett as well. He would slot in nicely in the forward line. Yeah,
again, that idea around, excuse me, small forwards doing damage. Essendon have got Kako and a bare cupboard. And it's kind of, along with Filippo, why Swade's not matched is a bit, these two guys being available.
Makes sense. I don't think you'd find many Bombers fans that disagree with that, to be honest. The Blues then have the bid for Jack Eisen.
Yeah, he's coming late too. He's a powerful 190 centimetre sort of forward on baller. He's got a really neat left foot. He's got the attributes that you like in those modern mid-forward hybrids. Put together a few really nice games late in the season at Coates level, but people who watched him play school footy, they think he's got what it takes. And I think 29, he could even potentially be bid on a little bit earlier than this. I think it's he's from that sort of 20 to 35 range, I think is where he's going to fall.
Bulldogs pick 30, Blake Benier, who's one that is another bit of a dark horse that could get looked at a little bit higher too. I know you liked him last time.
Yeah, I'm big on him. I think he's a really solid all-round footballer who's not just. So sometimes you hear solid all-round football and you think, no weapons. No, he can run and he can kick and he's tough. I think he's a really well-rounded footballer, and I think he'll become a very good AFL player. I think he sort of came into the under-18 championships a little bit underdone. I think he might have been injured beforehand, but he built into that championships really nice, and the back end of it was really good. And then he went back to Sandford level, shot out the under-18s, shot out the reserves as well. He's played some seriously good football this year.
31 West Coast, Kobe Evans.
Yeah, and he's an NGA for them, but they're just list spots have become an issue. And so someone said that they were disappointed they didn't take Greaves and try to get Evans later. I was concerned about list spots. And I think Evans is a really good player. And had he played this year, he's missed nearly the whole year injured. Had he played this year, I think he'd be spoken of in that top 20 range as well. He's big, powerful, athletic sort of forward who has designs on becoming a midfielder. I think his round one game this year and in the Waffle under-18s was 26-2. So he's got the capability to play big games, and I think West Coast will be happy to develop him.
The Giants at pick 32 with Ollie Greaves, who had punched out a 2K time trial. Was it today or yesterday? Got 6 minutes and 6 minutes 30, 6:40, something around that mark.
Yeah, and I think like Greaves is a good player. I feel a little bit bad having him this low, and I think I've probably ridden Ollie a bit harder than maybe I need to. He's a very good player. Let's make no doubt about it. He's a great kick. He wins a lot of ball. He's got size. You know, he gets from contest to contest. His 2K today suggests he's a decent enough runner. He kicks goals when he goes forward. So there's a lot of good things about him. The question marks are pure speed. He lacks a little bit of that. Defensive intent, which is something you can learn. So I think that's something that you'd hope to be able to train into him. The one that really holds him back from him is he's got a very big physical advantage over midfielders his age. And I've seen him worried out of contest, not in a scared way. I would never suggest that about an under 18 kid, but you know, smaller, nuggety, fast, athletic guys sort of hassle him to the point where he fumbles or they strip possession. And I want to see a guy his size just say, "Get out of my way, little man," and take the ball and dominate. Yeah, and I haven't seen that.
Here, where he places is going to be fascinating too. And just on him doing that 2K time trial test today, is that something that happens often for players who aren't able to do the combine test because of illness or injury? Is there a second chance, or is this something that was specifically orchestrated maybe by him and his team to show other teams? Do you know much about how that side of it worked? I was really interested to hear that even happened.
It's normally club organised. I can remember Cam Rayner and a few others in his draft class did a 2K after the fact once the combine was all done. I remember they got called in for a secret 2K, and that sort of consolidated him as the number one because the question marks were, could he run? It's not very common. You don't hear about it every year. It may well happen in other years and not get out publicly, but it does happen from time to time.
Yeah, interesting. Pick 33, Melbourne, Cameron Nan, who, funnily enough, today, I suppose, started to be spoken about in top 15, top 10 areas and maybe a potential invite to the draft night. So his range could be anything, I guess, if whispers are to be believed.
Yeah, he has been invited. That's confirmed.
Oh, that officially has been confirmed?
Yeah, I think he's the 12th or the 13th, but that was confirmed by, I think, Cal Toomey late this afternoon. Yeah, I'd heard Melbourne were keen on him, and I just thought in my head, 11 and 12 is too early. He's not there for me. I don't have him quite in the top 20 potential players. So I thought, well, normally when you hear these rumors about a club being right into them, it's normally not that first pick, it's that next pick, and they know they can get him there. But what we're hearing today is that no, clubs are thinking about him as a top 15 prospect. So I'd expect him to get taken probably now earlier than this. This would be, if I did a late mail Cal Toomey style night before the draft, he's probably going in the top 20. But he's a good player. And I think for me, I'd be comfortable taking him with Melbourne at 33. But I probably don't have him in the top 20 myself.
I mean, it'd be funny if they were the ones who were wanting him there for one of the earlier picks.
Yeah.
The doubled up picks.
Absolutely.
Pick 34 for the Tigers, you got Jack Dalton. That's probably the first time I've seen him assigned to us, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think taking CDT and Taylor meant that pure midfield run and speed probably wasn't addressed. And I think Jack Dalton is the best runner. There's considerations that Sam Allen may well have proved to be the better runner late in the season if he wasn't injured. But given what we've seen this year, Jack Dalton's the best runner. He's a massive endurance animal, but he's also got good high-end speed. He's a high motor operator. I think he's got work to do on his kicking, but he's a dogged little competitor. I love Jack. Yeah. I think he's a fantastic player. He's one of my favourites in this draft, and I think you're going to get a really good, tough, hard-nosed, hard-working, competitive footballer out of Jack.
He had a solid final series as well.
Yeah, brilliant. He broke both wrists. I think the story is that he did it doing a squat, a chest squat, and sort of snapped both his wrists. So he missed a stack of football, and then he came back and he was like 34 and 2, 36 possessions, 39 and 2. Like he came back and was like, whoa. He didn't miss a beat coming back. You know, running power, willingness to get his hands dirty inside, get the ball on the spread. No, he's a consistent little terrier, is Jack.
Pick 35 for the Magpies, Archie Ludowick.
Yeah, a bit of a slider because he's been spoken about as being a high-end forward this year, and I think he's got a lot of talent. He's got a few things. He missed the back half of the year with a PCL, so he's a bit unsighted. He was in the first half of the year demonstrating a bit of double grabbing with his marking, getting a lot of marks and getting a lot of goals, but just not that pure one grab clunker. But I do think Collingwood, having neglected the draft for a few years, will see him as someone who's a higher end talent than they've maybe had access to, and will be happy to take a key forward there.
And the Pies back in with a bid on Zach McCarthy.
Yeah, and so McCarthy's their NGA. He's raw. He's a 198 centimetre who mainly played as a ruck for his school footy this year, but he's considered a sort of a ruck forward at the next level and sort of pinch hit with his athleticism. But he's one of those kids that you take and he's skinny. He can run, he can jump, he can kick, he can mark, but he doesn't do it all the time. He's a bit raw and inconsistent. Collingwood will hope that he develops and becomes a really athletic sort of, mobile, tall forward option that can maybe pinch hit in the ruck around the ground for them.
The Cats on pick 37 with Marcus, here we go, Krasnodemskis.
Yeah, Krasnodemskis. He's got the name of all names this year. He's he's another raw one. So we're starting to get to a bit of sort of the raw athletic types are starting to get noticed. There's talks that he might be a late first round option. I've heard in the last couple of days. He's he's a super athlete. Like I heard him compared to, he's like a super raw Duff Tyler. He can run, He can sort of, high speed, high agility, can get the ball at ground level, athletic, but just hasn't really put it together, hasn't really got the football acumen that Duff Tyler's been able to demonstrate. So Geelong will take him as a project, one of the spots on the list they can take some time to fill, and they'll hope that his athletic profile will mean that he develops into a piece for them in the years to come.
And then rounding it out, West Coast with Tyler Williams.
And again, this is them taking their own NGA, list spots getting tight. I did see today, I think that maybe one of their Cat B rookies got moved onto their senior list, which might open up a Cat B spot. So potentially some of these NGAs, if they feel they won't attract a bid, they'll let slide and take someone else. But I think Tyler Williams and Kobe Evans in particular, they're both second round potential, if not higher. Williams is a really smart, creative half forward, not a massive goal kicker, but he's the kind that brings everyone else in the game. If you think about from your club, Shane Edwards, that really creative sort of starts at half forward. And then obviously Edwards had a fantastic career where he went on ball and became so damaging. But Williams is that same sort of creative operator. He's not as refined, he's not as developed, and he may never get that level of consistency, but he shows those glimpses of being able to do smart, clever things in amongst traffic and set other people away.
That would be a great pick. If you have any of the IQ of Shane Edwards, you're laughing as a football club. Geez, that would be... I mean, when you sort of start to piece together the first few picks you do for West Coast, then these NGA-type plays, it's actually a really promising next sort of 4 to 7 years for West Coast as these kids develop and grow, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is what happens. You go down the bottom of the ladder, you get access to better kids, you make sure you get your strategy right, you pick trades to get more picks in at the range where you think you're going to get the talent that you need, and then you put together drafts where you pick 4 or 5 or 6 kids and you hope that 3 or 4 of them are hits, and then across 3 or 4 years you've got 12 to 15 players that you think can be part of your best 22 going forward. Yeah,
exactly right. Well, that's the second round done, so I appreciate that. I'll bring the first round up again for people who maybe have just tuned in, have a quick look. We're about to go into another exercise, so if the chat's got questions, start to think about anything you want to ask after we do this next bit. But I did ask Tommy to do a power rankings of a top 15 of a mesh between the 2024 draft class and the 2025 draft class, because I guess there's always comparisons, right or wrong, about which class was stronger, and I thought it would just be interesting to see where they all fit. So chat, think about any draft questions you've got in the meantime, but I'll bring this one up. Tommy, talk us through this. This is your... it was top 16 I went to the 16th player, but power rankings for the 2024 and 2025 draft cropped. What was the rationale behind all of this?
Yeah, so I suppose a bit of context. This is a super hard exercise too, because you can't help but be influenced by the kids that played AFL this year. I think that's like, I tried so hard to not think about what they're becoming. So what I did was, Reading the Play was on hiatus at the end of last year, so I wasn't writing, but I was following the draft, and I did have a power ranking sort of set up, Essendon not being very good and potentially having some picks. You want to know what the kids are like. So I did have a power ranking. So I went back and brought that up and lined that up, and then I've thrown my power ranking for this year's crop in amongst it. And I think I ended up getting to about 25, because I've got a brain where I just start something and it just becomes something bigger than it needs to. And I think I said to you at the start of this show tonight, the top 15, I think it's 9 players from last year. But then by the time it gets to 25, it's sort of a 12-13 split, like it's pretty even. So this year's draft sort of has got that consistent player at that secondary level, whereas last year's draft had more kids at a higher level earlier. And that's kind of the context. I haven't ranked them based on how they perform this year. So if you look at someone like Jagger Smith is still at 12, he obviously hasn't played this year. I didn't want him to be unfairly marginalised against kids who have played this year. So this is where I rank them in their draft years. And Sam Lawler for me just comes out on top. He's that beautiful combination that you want in a midfielder of brutality and class. He's going to kill you with physicality, but then he'll kill you with foot skills. He's just got that dream combination.
I do like seeing Tash Houghton sneak up into 7th.
Oh, he's my favourite from last year. I was so upset that Essendon didn't sort of, when we traded out the Kako pick to avoid the bids and sort of push picks back and did all that kind of business, I was like, it means we can't get Taj because he's the one that I would love to take at that pick. But I know why Rosa did it, and I understand the mechanics behind, not losing the pick and all that sort of stuff. But I did sort of cry a little bit when I knew we definitely couldn't get Taj last year.
No, it's interesting. I appreciate you going to the trouble of doing that. And even like seeing, I know you've based it off their draft year, out of interest, just with someone like Murphy Reid, for example, if you were to factor in what his actual season was like this year, where would you re-rank him, if at all?
Oh, see, this is hard because he's a little gun, Murphy Reid. He is. And he's the most deserving rising star, so I'm not knocking him at all. We do see sometimes players who come in that are more ready and able to perform, and they also come into a club or a team where their role means that they are more able to perform. Now, this is not a knock on Murphy Reid, but I don't think I'm going to have him come up much higher because I just think his ceiling is not where some of those other boys is. His criticism or the question marks on Murphy last year were he's not overly quick, he's not big, he's not strong. What he is super smart, super high IQ, super foot skills, and he's got fast feet in traffic, so he can sort of dance in and out and create that little half step of space. They're not things that he's going to massively improve on. He's not going to get quicker. He might marginally, but he's not really going to become a power athlete. He's not going to get height. He's not going to get brute strength. He's going to still be a smart, creative, nimble half forward / midfielder who will be very damaging and will be a brilliant player. But I think some of those guys I've got ahead of him, they've just got a little bit more upside and could become more impactful players as they go forwards.
Fair enough. Makes sense. I appreciate it. It's good rationale behind it. I enjoy that. We'll chat. If you've got any questions to send through, fire them away. We'll get a few in quickly. Widescreen wants to know, what does the 2026 top 5 draft look like currently? If you've had a look that far ahead for open pool players, does it look better than this year's crop? Give
me 1 second. I've got a tab open here somewhere.
The first thing to say, widescreen, I'm not sure if you caught on to the start of it, but with Dougie Cochran now locked away NGA, it does mean the top 2 prospects are pretty much off the table for clubs, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's there's some good players next year. There are I can't find my tab actually. I think it's a stronger draft. I think the top end quality is higher. I think there are some really strong players in that draft pool. I think, yes, we've heard that Walker and Cochran are now off the chart. But in terms of, here we are. I've got it here. Where are we? Drafts. 26. So names I've got early at this stage. Another Freo NGA, Robinson. He's a powerful midfielder. Van Dijk's a tall midfielder from South Australia. There's a key forward in Victoria, Jack Pickett. He kicked a lot of goals this year in the Coates League. Archie Butler's a creative and sort of powerful small forward / midfielder. He'd want to be a little bit bigger, I think, to progress into a midfielder at AFL level, but he's got some really good tricks. No, there's quite a few. Obviously, Tanner Armstrong's a Richmond NGA, powerful, stocky, sort of low center of gravity type that drives with his legs and creates separation. Probably needs to work on his kicking, but a talented player that you'll be looking to match at this stage. I think probably late first round, but potentially could go a bit higher. Cody Templeton out of Gippsland Power played some massive games as a small mid that goes forward. No, there's quite a few. Neocleus kicked goals in the under-17s game.
Yeah.
I think the top end has got some serious talent, probably higher end pure talent than what this year's got. But without having deep dived into these names fully, I haven't got a read on the depth yet.
Okay. That's good to know. It gives us some names to look out for early next year. Birdman wants to know what do you think CDT's ceiling is? Could he be a unicorn like Darcy?
I think he's a different player. I don't think he's ever going to be the pure contested marking creature that Darcy. Like Darcy just puts those long arms up and no one can outmark him. He's a unique weapon. We've seen players with height and athleticism before, but he's got the football as well. So Darcy's different. CDT, I think of him more as a running player in a way. Like, I know he's tall and he's going to pinch hit in the ruck and he's going to go forward. He's almost like, you remember when Buddy Franklin was younger and he played as that kind of lead up centre half forward.
Yeah.
He was skinny. He was 198 centimetres, but my Lord, he could run. And we always described him as he's a half forward flanker trapped in a key forward's body. I think CDT is a bit like that. He's a mobile, athletic, ground level player in a giant body. So he's going to get mismatches. He's going to cause damage forward to centre because he can run so well. He's going to get the ball around the ground. His foot skills are good. I think we look at him as being a really damaging player in multiple facets, but maybe not in a pure position that we think of, not as a pure ruck, not as a pure key position forward.
It almost sounds like he's closer to a Tim English.
Yeah, potentially. I think English has got that ability to really drive at the ball and mark it cleanly. I don't see CDT as a real pack smasher behind the ball. I see him as more, if he's playing deep forward, he's double leading and getting away with his speed and athleticism. If he's around the ground, it hits the deck and he's away like a cat, part of the linking chain. I think he's going to do damage with his foot skills and run more than his size and, I suppose, key position nature.
Fair enough. This might be a difficult one to answer, but what percentage chance do you have Richmond taking Roby and Grill?
If CDT goes to West Coast, I think that's who you take.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's Roby and Grill, and then
Taylor
and Sharp might slide to Essendon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dominoes that fall from whatever West Coast does is going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
Callaway, any thoughts? I mean, I don't think we're going to go for him at that pick in the 30s. I think we're going to bank on something happening later. I don't know whether he'd get to a rookie pick, but...
Yeah, he's a good player, young Callaway. I think last time we spoke and I was sort of talking, he's just like such a well-rounded player that's got no real weaknesses. He's got no elite attribute that stands out and goes, draft me because of this. But he's just such a solid footballer. And normally that comes from a kid who's hardworking and disciplined and coachable. And I think when you get those kind of kids into AFL systems, if they've got an ounce of athleticism and size, they can make a spot. They can find a role for them. So I think you late in the draft, I think you will consider him. He may well slide to the rookie list. There's talk that there may only be between 45 and 55 picks. So given that there's going to be less players taken, some of these players who we think are good and we like what they can bring, they might just slip out to the rookie period.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I'm happy to take him for free. CDT, what kind of place in the game do you see him playing in the first few seasons? I mean, we all think he'll be a long-term ruckman, but he's not going to be able to obviously do that straight from the start. What kind of blend of forward rucking do you see him doing early days?
I think early he'll be predominantly as a forward, and I think given he's light-framed but super athletic, I think he will almost be used like a bit of a third tall. He's that athletic speed. I know he's taller than a third tall, but he'll play stylistically that role. And then I think they'll start to integrate him as around the ground ruck work. He'll start doing the throw-ins around the ground, and through that he will suppose, start to win the ball more and develop more. And as he gets bigger and stronger, that transition will become closer to 50-50, I think.
One from Scooter. With Essendon reported to be interested in a trade for the Blues, pick 9 or 11, is there a situation you feel they could target Doveston, be able to match him with Kako? Gee, that'd be a bit of fun, wouldn't it? Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we spoke earlier about where's sort of how high could Doveston go, and I said if West Coast do a deal with Carlton for that 9-11, they'd consider him. Essendon's absolutely the same. I think Kako and not much else. I think Doveston there. And then that maybe changes what Essendon do later in the draft. If they get that early small forward, then you start to think about, well, they might not then take a Latrell Pickett, and they might think Swade having more on-ball capability and a bit of a higher half forward rather than a deep one. They might then match the bid on him. So that would change a few things, but I think they'll absolutely consider him if they can get a pick there.
Do you reckon there'll be much trading on draft night? I know a lot of clubs are talking about different options. When push comes to shove, because I think when it comes to a lot of these trades, as supporters, everyone's wanting it to include a future first from whatever club. I don't see clubs parting away with future firsts in live trading this year. I think they're too valuable, given sort of how you've already sort of hinted at the draft next year being a bit stronger. If the picks are all going to be just based in this year, do you see much movement happening?
Yeah, but I agree with what you said that it won't be future firsts. I think clubs,
it could be 2027 first, I guess. They can go 2 years, I suppose.
That's true. That draft is heavily compromised with all the Tassie picks and their access to the 17-year-olds from the year before. So that takes some of those kids out of the pool as well. There's talk about 3 or 4 different sort of pick swaps occurring. They're mainly around clubs like Gold Coast who need points, but then other clubs thinking, well, we can flick them points and get a bit higher up and more towards this area of the draft we've spoken about that's quite strong, that sort of top 20 range. If you can get a pick in there, but Gold Coast can take points, both clubs win out of it. So I think there'll be a few little maneuverings around that, particularly if, as we said earlier, the clubs get aggressive with their bids.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Everyone's talking a big game, but who will be brave enough to pull the trigger and do the trades? We'll have to wait and see. But Tommy, thank you so much again for jumping on tonight, mate, and doing another mock draft, including the second round and the power rankings for the combo from last year. Do you have anything else coming out for people to keep an eye out for up until draft night?
No, I'll be live sort of tweeting on X. Tweeting. It's not Twitter anymore, is it?
I still call it tweeting as well.
Yeah, I'll be posting on X for the first round. So I'll be live sort of posting and sort of giving my takes on it, giving myself the 0 out of 23 or 22, whatever it is, out of the first round as we go along. But
we're all going to be the same. We're all going to get red X's.
Yeah, but hoping to engage and have some good conversation with some people. So that'll be happening on draft night. I'm not going to do a late mail. I want to set and forget. My Supercoach team at the start of the year, I pick it in round 1, and then it's the same side in round 21. I'm going to do that with this last 3.0 version of my Phantom. I'm going to let that one sit, and I'll use that as my comparison and my judgment marker. And then I'll have a little bit of a rest because the last couple of weeks has been hectic chasing draft news. So there's been a bit going on, but I'll put out a top 25 for 2026, in the month following the draft. But I'll also have, it's the 25th year of the century. So I'm going to start releasing some teams of the century for club by club. So given it's the 25th year, we're a quarter of the way through, and we'll start releasing some best 22s or some best 23s now. And I'll also be putting out reserve sides. So just those guys that just missed out so they can get some acknowledgement as well. So that'll be my next little project. But we've also got our weekly article. So the next weekly one that will come out after the draft's done will be about the rule changes for next year. So just some opinion pieces on things going on in the game. And then we'll ramp up after Christmas into the season previews for next year and club by club predictions and all that kind of stuff.
So you got a fair bit on, even though it's meant to be quietening down. But make sure everybody get around reading the play on X. Obviously got the website as well on wordpress.com. And make sure you follow Tommy individually as well on Twitter. So plenty happening. We appreciate your time and your analysis and insights. Like I said, you're an absolute fan favourite, and we'll be happy to have you back next year to talk about 2026 draft, because no doubts, I know my team will be featuring heavily in that draft. I'm not sure how the Bombers will go. You might fare a little bit better. Before you go, we also spoke about the Zach Merritt stuff last time. How do you feel now about him walking back in the door, and how do you sort of see that playing out?
Look, I think of all the players in the AFL, the most professional he'd be up there with the most professional. He's going to come back. It might be awkward for 15 minutes, but he's an animal on the training track. He's going to come back and he's going to be exactly the same player he was last year. Whether he wants to get traded at the end of the year will be determined by how well Essendon go and whether the club looks like they've brought in the right people in terms of strength and conditioning and Matt Innes and in terms of the draftees looking like maybe the directions the ship's turning a bit. But I've got no doubt that Zach will probably win his next Crichton and have another outstanding season.
He is the ultimate professional. So I won't be surprised to see that happening either. But Tommy, thank you again, mate, for jumping on. And we look forward to seeing how the mock draft plays out and how many green ticks you get. It'll be exciting.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No worries.